Okay, just stepped out of church, and wow, Pastor Florin's sermon. That really hit home, didn't it?
It really did.
Yeah.
Starting this whole Roles of Jesus series with Jesus as creator. Yeah, that felt foundational.
Absolutely. And the passage he used, Colossians 1, verses 15 to 23, powerful stuff.
Totally. It just defines Jesus in such a profound way. And like you said, that changes how we see everything else, ourselves included.
Exactly. And that's what we want to kind of dive into today, right? It's not
Yeah.
just, okay, Jesus created things, but what does his being the creator actually mean for us? Like practically,
Mm-hmm.
especially for younger people trying to figure things out in this crazy world. I felt like the sermon gave some real anchors.
Yeah, it offers deep insight for sure. And it connects directly to this idea of apprenticing under Jesus. It's about understanding who he is, his authority, and then figuring out how to actually live that out.
Okay, so let's unpack that. When Pastor Florin called Jesus creator based on Colossians,
Mm-hmm.
what's the real depth there? It feels bigger than just, kicking off the Big Bang.
Oh, it's colossal. The passage really goes deep into his identity. It starts with the image of the invisible God.
Right, the icon.
Exactly. And that word, icon, it's not just a picture. Think of it more like the tangible expression of something invisible. He makes God visible.
So not just a representative, but God himself made tangible.
Precisely. And crucially, the text makes it clear Jesus isn't created like we think of things being created. It says he is before all things, no beginning.
Wow.
And then verse 19 hits hard. God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him. So we're talking about the complete essence of God residing in Jesus. If you've seen him, you've seen the Father. It's fundamental.
That's a massive claim. Okay, so he's the fullness of God, not created. But then what about that phrase, firstborn over all creation? That can trip people up, right? Sounds like he was the first thing made.
Yeah, that's a common misunderstanding today. But back then, in that culture, firstborn wasn't just about birth order. It was mainly about rank, authority, preeminence.
Ah, okay. Like the heir.
Exactly like the heir, the one who inherits everything, who holds the highest position. Verses 16, 17, 18 hammer this home, his supremacy. So firstborn establishes his rank over creation, not as the start of creation.
And that makes so much more sense. It sets up his authority.
Right. And think about how that challenges our modern ideas. We often feel like we have to earn our rank, our value. But Jesus' status, it's inherent. It's who he is.
Okay, so he's supreme, the ultimate authority. Then what exactly falls under all things that he created? This sermon mentioned the scope was just mind-blowing.
And Paul is incredibly specific in Colossians, isn't he? For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible.
Visible and invisible.
Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him, and all things means all things. Not just the physical universe, stars, planets, us.
But also the invisible stuff, like spiritual forces.
Yes. Those thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, that was their way of talking about the spiritual realm, the unseen forces, good and bad, that people believed influenced the world. Jesus created them. He's supreme over them.
That lines up perfectly with John 1, doesn't it? Through him, all things were made.
Exactly, John 1. In the beginning was the Word. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. And then the Word became flesh. It's this complete picture. Jesus is actively involved in creating and sustaining everything.
Right, that's the cosmic scale.
Yeah.
But then Pastor Florin really brought it down to us, to humanity. Where do we fit in all this? Because that's where it starts getting really personal, I think.
It does. And humanity has this unique spot, right? We're made in the image of God. That's different from everything else he created.
Sets us apart.
Totally. And the sermon pointed to Hebrews 1.14, how even angels are described as ministering spirits sent to serve us, God's people. Think about that.
Wow. That flips the script.
But the ultimate proof of our value, it's Jesus himself. The fullness of God didn't just make us. He became one of us. He became human.
To make redemption possible.
Exactly, to bring about redemption and reconciliation through his death. And Pastor Florin really stressed reconciliation. It's about being brought back into relationship with God after being separated, alienated. It's this incredibly costly act of love that just screams our value to him.
So when the sermon said, you are worth saving, Jesus created you for a high purpose. How does that actually land for someone, maybe a young person, who's just feeling lost or overwhelmed or comparing themselves constantly on social media. How is this practical help?
It's incredibly practical because it offers a foundation for worth that isn't based on performance or external factors at all. It directly counters those feelings of being inadequate or just, a speck of dust. When you grasp that the creator of everything, the one holding the universe together, sees you as his masterpiece, his crowning achievement, that gives you an intrinsic value the world can't touch.
So it's not about likes or grades or...
None of that. You are intentionally made for a purpose by a God who loves you intensely and wants connection with you. Internalizing that, it can fundamentally change how you see yourself. It provides this quiet, unshakable confidence. I am valued, period, because he made me and loves me.
That's a massive shift, moving from looking outward for validation to finding it inward through him. Okay, so if that's true, if he's a creator and we have this immense value, what's our response? This is the apprenticeship part, right? The doing.
Right, the practical side. Pastor Florin gave some clear applications. First one, confidence.
Confidence? How so?
Because if Jesus is truly supreme over all things, governments, technology, global issues, everything, then we don't have to live in constant fear or anxiety about it all.
Okay, that's easier said than done sometimes with a 24/7 news cycle.
Totally. Which is why the sermon's advice was so direct. Don't listen to the lies. It's okay to turn off the news channel. And even more, cling to the Most High God, especially when things feel overwhelming or you're triggered.
Find that anchor point.
Exactly. His authority over everything means our ultimate security isn't in the shifting sands of the world, but in him. Don't let the external chaos dictate your internal peace.
That's so relevant today. Okay, so confidence is first. What came next? It felt like it moved toward how we treat others.
Yes, and this is maybe the core practice for an apprentice, seeing humans the way Jesus does.
Okay. What does that look like in practice?
It means actively choosing to see the inherent God-given worth in every single person. Pastor Florin was pointed here, especially about race.
Yeah, he mentioned it being a human invention.
A human invention originally put in place to categorize some individuals as closer to animals, and that these ideas are still used to divide people. As apprentices, we have to consciously reject that.
So actively look past those labels.
Actively see the image of God, not the category society tries to put someone in. See their inherent dignity, regardless of the superficial differences. It's a discipline.
And it wasn't just race, right? He brought up abilities, age.
Absolutely. He asked those tough questions. Where do we draw the line on ability? How young is too young? How old is too old?
That connects to Psalm 139.
Yes. David reflecting on God knitting him together in the womb, seeing his unformed body. David recognized God's value on his life before he was even recognizably human by our standards.
Even as just a clump of cells, as the sermon put it.
Right. So as apprentices, we try to adopt that perspective, seeing value from the very beginning, seeing value regardless of physical or cognitive ability. It has huge implications for how we treat the most vulnerable.
So this seeing leads directly to doing, to action.
It has to. Otherwise, it's just a nice idea. Being an apprentice means defending the weak, speaking for those who can't.
And acknowledging it's complex, right? No easy answers.
Exactly. The sermon said, conversations are complex and difficult, slogans do not work, and two wrongs don't make a right. It calls for thoughtful, nuanced engagement, not just picking a side or shouting slogans.
Okay, so what are the concrete actions then?
Actions of love. Being a kingdom ambassador in a dark world, representing God's love and character, not judgment. Speaking about his love for the unlovable. Finding common ground. And importantly, gathering with his people to be encouraged. It's this whole package of actively practicing how Jesus sees and loves the world and letting that shape our interactions.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really rich dive into just that first part of the sermon series. It feels so clear now how Jesus being creator isn't just some abstract doctrine. It gives us confidence, shows us our incredible value, and then calls us into this very real, practical apprenticeship, learning to see and love others like he does.
It really does shift things, doesn't it? From just being part of creation to being an active participant in his love for creation.
So as we wrap up, what's a thought we can leave people with, something to chew on this week?
How about this? What's one specific, practical way you can practice seeing another human being as infinitely valuable this week? Maybe someone you disagree with, someone online, someone who annoys you. How can you intentionally look past the world's labels and see them as part of his cherished creation?
That's a great challenge, a really practical way to start living this out. Thanks so much for unpacking this with me. And for all of you listening, we hope this gives you something solid to reflect on and put into practice this week.